3 antique keys, a cracked leather folder bearing a dead queen's crest, and one single sentence from a lawyer that erased 15 years of quiet, comfortable certainty in a single morning. Camilla's son had sharply asked him to read the 4th line again. But by the time the lawyer finally did, Prince William wasn't even looking at the legal document anymore. He was holding out those 3 keys. He wasn't offering them. He was taking them back. The execution in the records room. Nobody at that heavy wooden table moved an inch. Not Camilla, not her children, not even King Charles. Charles had spent years allowing one very dangerous assumption to settle over this newly blended family like fine dust, that a sprawling 12,000-acre estate would one day belong entirely to Camilla's side. However, the lawyers had just quietly confirmed something utterly brutal. It didn't belong to them right now, and it never had. That wasn't the part that made the king lower his eyes to the floor. The ultimate humiliation lay buried on the final page of the document, hiding under the signature of a man that everyone in the room had completely forgotten about. Let me set the scene, because the how of that freezing morning reveals everything you need to know about the power dynamics at play. 3 hours before those 3 keys were set to come off the table, Camilla's family arrived at the estate, expecting a private, standard formality. They were not expecting an argument or a confrontation. They were expecting paperwork. The estate, let's call it by its historic name, Ravensmere, had been treated as settled business for the better part of 15 years. And we are not talking about a quaint little summer cottage here. We are talking about 12,000 sprawling acres of prime British land, a stunning Jacobean manor, 42 fully functional cottages, 2 massive working farms, and a private, pristine lake. It also housed a collection of rare historical paintings that had never once appeared in any public inventory. Here is the detail that shows just how completely settled everyone thought this arrangement was. The household staff had officially started referring to one of the brightest upstairs rooms as Mr. Parker Bowles's study. That very morning, someone on the staff had meticulously placed fresh, expensive flowers inside it. Fresh flowers, in a room they had already mentally handed over to a new owner. Hold that specific image in your mind. By sunset, those same flowers would be quietly carried back out. And then, Prince William arrived. Please notice exactly how he arrived, because his entrance was the first warning sign, and absolutely nobody recognized it. There was no grand royal motorcade, no official announcement from the palace. Just one dark, unassuming vehicle slipping quietly through the towering eastern gates at exactly 8:46 in the morning. And he wasn't alone. 2 high-level royal solicitors stepped out of the vehicle directly behind him, each carrying an identical black document case. That is the second massive warning. But here is the third warning, which should have cleared the room of all air had anyone truly understood its significance. William resolutely refused to enter through the grand main doors. He completely bypassed the sweeping stone staircase and walked around the side of the massive historic house. He crossed the wet, freezing gravel courtyard and entered through the old, forgotten estate office. This was the damp, cold room where the raw land records had been stored under lock and key since Queen Victoria's reign. You must actively consider this question. Why would the Prince of Wales ignore the luxurious family drawing room? Why would he overlook the roaring fireplaces and walk past his waiting family to go directly to the dusty records room? The answer is the backbone of this story. This was never meant to be a warm family gathering. It was a legal execution. William had come to the very room where the murder weapon was securely kept. The tragedy of harmless assurances. To truly understand why this specific meeting felt like a bombshell, you must delve into what Camilla's family genuinely believed, and more importantly, why they believed it. They weren't simply being greedy or delusional. They hadn't concocted this narrative in their own heads. They had been told, over and over again. By 9 o'clock in the morning, a staff member quietly informed Camilla that William was in the building. She reportedly assumed he had come to discuss the upcoming, highly expensive renovations. This assumption was completely reasonable, given the extensive, detailed discussions about significant renovations. The sprawling east wing of the manor was in dire need of major structural work. 2 of the ancient lead roofs were heavily leaking. There had even been ongoing conversations about modernizing several of the outer cottages specifically for members of her extended family to use year-round. According to insiders, King Charles had actively encouraged all of this, not formally but privately. Powerful, wealthy families often make quiet promises to one another, knowing that no one will ask for proof on paper. The king had repeated 5 simple words on several occasions. you'll always have Ravensmere. On the surface, these words seemed harmless. However, they ceased to be innocent the moment someone invested real money based on a deep belief in them. And Camilla's family did invest. They created expensive architectural plans and measured rare custom furniture to ensure it would fit through the historic doorways. One enthusiastic relative even discussed bringing a collection of expensive show horses to the estate's southern paddocks. Camilla's son was shown the large underground wine cellar and informed which vintage bottles belonged to the house and which ones he could freely open. Now imagine hearing this kind of talk year after year. Picture being treated as the future owner every time your car passed through those grand iron gates. Then imagine Prince William walking into the cold records room, setting a 6-page legal opinion on the wooden table, and quietly saying, "None of you were ever beneficiaries." This simple sentence changes everything about the meeting. It alters how they interpret the past. Suddenly, every warm promise takes on a different meaning. Every planned renovation raises legal questions. Every room they thought was theirs now belongs to someone else. But to whom? That is the significant question lingering over the table, and Prince William refuses to answer it for now. Hold on to that phrase. None of you were ever beneficiaries. It is quiet yet powerful. He didn't yell, nor did he say, "You have lost the estate." He didn't pound his fist and claim, "I have decided to take it back." Those phrases would imply that the estate was theirs to lose. Instead, he used the past tense, wherever. He reached back in time to moments before any of them walked through those gates. With just 4 words, he didn't just take away their future. He rewrote the last 15 years as a big misunderstanding. Years of being shown the wine cellar, years of measuring furniture, years of calling a room their private study. All of it was recast as having never held any legal standing. That is a colder, harder blow than pure anger. Anger conveys, "You crossed me." What William said is far worse. "There was never anything here for you." The ghost in the leather folder. Camilla entered the cold estate office just after 9:20 in the morning. Charles followed her a few minutes later, visibly irritated. Not about the legal situation, but rather because this matter had not been brought to him privately first. This was the first sign of who truly held power in the room. Prince William remained seated next to the lead royal solicitor, one hand resting on a faded, cracked leather folder. Charles glanced at the folder immediately, recognizing the faded gold crest that adorned it. It belonged to his grandmother, the Queen Mother. In that moment, the confidence drained from Charles's face. He understood, without reading any legal documents, that something significant was happening. Deep down, he sensed that he had just lost something important. He didn't know what it was. Here is what the cracked leather folder contained. This is where the situation shifts from a standard family argument to something far more intricate. Charles did not buy Ravensmere with his own money. The state did not give the estate to Camilla. Most people are surprised to learn this. It wasn't standard crown estate property, which doesn't automatically belong to the reigning monarch. Instead, it was buried within a private family settlement. This legal structure was meticulously created decades earlier and had been altered 3 specific times. Examining these changes closely is essential, as they form the invisible trap. The first change protected the land from being sold. The second change safeguarded the historic house from being demolished. The third change secured something that nobody in that crowded room thought to check: the succession clause. This rule outlined precisely who would inherit the estate next. What Charles really owned, in legal terms, was something referred to as a life interest. Let me clarify that. It is the key to understanding the entire story. A life interest means you can use something for your entire life. Charles could live at Ravensmere, take care of the grounds, host parties, and even earn some money from the 2 working farms. However, he faced a significant problem. Under no circumstances could he permanently pass the estate to anyone outside the royal bloodline specified in the original settlement. Not with a quiet promise, not with a handwritten letter, not even with a royal command as king. He held the keys to the house for his lifetime, but never had the legal right to decide who would inherit it after him. For 15 straight years, he confidently promised he would. Then Camilla's daughter posed a reasonable question that we might also be considering. If the king has full control during his lifetime, why can't he decide what happens afterward? A royal solicitor calmly opened the leather folder and provided the answer that froze the room. Because that choice was taken from him before his marriage. Not after the wedding, before it. Someone very astute had anticipated this messy conflict. They expected Charles to marry Camilla and foresaw her family moving toward the estate, They had closed the door to that possibility years before anyone else realized it was even open. The room assumed the mastermind behind that move was Queen Elizabeth. Everyone silently looked at William, waiting for him to mention the late Queen's name. He didn't. It wasn't her. The binding change was signed in late 1999. This was 3 years before the Queen Mother passed away, and 6 years before Charles married Camilla. Alongside the Queen Mother's shaky signature was a second, much bolder one, Princess Margaret's. Now the room was not only legally tense, but also deeply personal. The Margaret Protocol and the 99-year checkmate. Anyone who really knew this family understood who Princess Margaret was behind closed doors. She was observant, careful around outsiders, and strongly protective of the family's private property. Old documents show that during a trustee meeting, Margaret raised a big concern. She worried that Ravensmere could easily pass through a second marriage to a family member the original settlor never mentioned. She didn't accuse anyone directly, but she didn't need to. The legal wording she insisted on made her point clear. It was harsh enough to silence everyone at the table. No spouse, no child of a spouse, and no descendant unrelated by direct blood to the line of King George VI shall ever gain permanent title, controlling interest, or beneficial ownership. Take a moment to think about what that really means. It is much crueler than just being named and turned away. Camilla's children weren't named in that tough clause. In 1999, 2 royal women made a bold decision to protect their family's future. They excluded a spouse's family from inheriting property even before the marriage. This action highlights Princess Margaret and the Queen Mother's strong understanding of how the royal family's dynamics would change. At the time, Charles and Camilla were not legally married, and they would not be publicly recognized as a couple for several more years. Margaret's foresight in anticipating family changes, even before a legal marriage, shows her desire to keep the estate from going to the Parker Bowles family. While people often discuss Prince William's insights in modern matters, he continued a strategy set by his great-aunt. When King Charles claimed he didn't know about the exclusion clause, William presented a signed document from November 1999 that challenged Charles's earlier private promises. For a few tense moments, Charles was speechless, and the solicitor had to step in to continue the conversation. I feel sympathy for Charles because his situation shows how smart people can make mistakes. The legal agreement he signed in 1999 did not clearly state that his future wife's family would not inherit. This important detail was hidden in a complicated financial plan related to royal properties, including Ravensmere, which was mentioned only twice. Charles may have signed it quickly without understanding what it meant or thought it could be changed later. It could have been amended with the other trustees' consent, William being the final decision-maker. Knowing this context helps explain why Charles tried to negotiate changes with William, who questioned who would benefit from the trust. When William learned the new trust would benefit Camilla's family, he rejected the proposal. Charles then tried to offer Camilla's family a long lease instead of ownership, hoping to keep the estate in the royal family. However, since any lease over 21 years needed unanimous approval from the trustees, William turned that idea down too, leaving Charles's plans unfulfilled. The fatal error in the books. Let's take a moment to discuss the 2 rejected proposals. They reveal important details about a hidden conflict. This conflict wasn't about loud arguments, it was all about legal details. The first proposal was straightforward. It suggested creating a trust and naming Camilla's children as the beneficiaries. It was clear and fell directly into the trap created by the 1999 rules. William dismissed it quickly. The second proposal was different. It showed that someone had carefully read the 1999 amendment and looked for loopholes. Proposing a 99-year lease for £1 a year was clever. On paper, it followed all the rules. The royal bloodline kept the title, and nothing officially changed hands. It just rented out for a century to people who could never own it. Someone on Charles's side clearly understood the legal issues and tried to work around them. This indicates that it wasn't just a misunderstanding. You don't accidentally create a complex workaround for a clause you didn't realize existed. The second proposal proves that someone understood the 1999 amendment and still attempted to circumvent it. The Queen Mother's amendment had already closed a loophole, stating that any agreement over 21 years needed unanimous approval. This made me realize what those 2 royal women achieved in 1999. They didn't just make a simple rule. They anticipated the clever ways a future king might try to bypass it and block those paths long before. They prevented a direct transfer, a new trust, and a cleverly disguised long lease. It's as if they prepared for every move Charles might make and had a solid counter ready for each one, safeguarded for 26 years. This kind of planning goes beyond typical estate planning. It shows a deep understanding of future possibilities and a refusal to let emotions interfere with legal facts. After these two firm rejections, you would think that was the end of it. But just 3 weeks later, private contractors showed up at the gates of Ravensmere. They ignored the leaking roofs and focused on a detailed residential survey. They measured the entire west wing, inspected the historic kitchens, and checked if the long nursery corridor could be converted into luxury apartments. Importantly, no one told Prince William. This was a serious mistake that turned a simple disagreement into a conflict. The survey cost £18,400 and was charged to a hidden estate maintenance account that William oversees. William noticed a strange charge labeled future occupancy adaptation while reviewing routine roof repairs. Curious about who would occupy the large house, he looked into it more. He pulled recent financial invoices and saw a large furniture order, including custom mahogany shelving and a glass wine room. The order was from Parker Bowles, not King Charles or Queen Camilla. This showed that Ravensmere was being prepared as a permanent home, which went against the 1999 amendment that prevented such ownership. While family discussions could be ignored, the financial records clearly showed intent. This order shifted the situation from a family disagreement to a legal matter, forcing William to act. If a trustee sees misuse of trust funds and does nothing, they neglect their responsibilities. The preparations for Camilla's family created a legal duty for William to respond. The charity checkmate. In the cold estate office, Camilla argued that no one had taken anything and that all architectural surveys were just preliminary. No lease had been signed, and the expensive furniture wasn't installed yet. While Camilla was technically correct, Prince William wasn't accusing them of stealing. He wanted to show that they were preparing to inherit something without legal rights. When Camilla's son angrily pushed the leather folder aside, William pointed out, "Assurances are not legal ownership," referring to the promises Charles made. King Charles told William, "This could have easily been handled privately." But William replied, "It was private until trust money from the estate was used." This highlighted a key legal issue. Royal families usually handle scandals quietly, but financial records can reveal everything. William publicly challenged the situation because the trust funds were used for a property that the legal beneficiaries did not occupy. Camilla sensed the danger. If William was willing to investigate one property, he could look into all family settlements, which made her uneasy. When they talked about inheritance, Camilla's daughter pointed out that the estate would go to William. However, he had renounced his claim to Ravensmere just 9 days earlier. This raised an odd question. Why argue for an estate only to refuse it? William's actions indicated he didn't want the estate, but he wanted to control its future. By giving up his claim, he triggered a clause that allowed the estate to pass to Harry, starting a chain reaction. Harry's name wasn't included in the settlement. Princess Anne had chosen to step aside in the succession, leaving the question of who would be left. This brought Prince Andrew into the conversation, alarming Charles, who wanted to protect the estate's integrity. However, Andrew had already been disqualified because he stepped back from royal duties. With William renounced, Harry not named, and Anne having declined, that left Prince Edward. Camilla's son urged them to read the decision again. Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh, would be the sole beneficiary of the Ravensmere estate. The twist was that Edward had accepted the inheritance on the condition that the estate wouldn't be his private home. Instead, its resources would support a charity for wounded veterans, bereaved families, and youth aging out of foster care. So Edward inherited the estate only to give away almost all its benefits. This shocked everyone at the table, who expected a greedy future king. Instead, they lost it to a quiet man who refused to treat it as personal property. His charitable condition was not only decent, it was a clever move. From Camilla's family's viewpoint, if Edward had taken Ravensmere as his estate, they might have resented him, seeing him as a royal villain driven by ambition. Instead, he turned the estate into a charity for bereaved military families, making it impossible to view him as greedy. This act of kindness changed public opinion significantly. Now, two very different versions of the family existed on the same land. One side represented luxury and comfort, while the other focused on historic cottages and retreats for veterans. This silent comparison troubled Charles, since he realized he had lost not just a house, but a significant public story. William handed 3 keys to Edward's solicitor. Each key unlocked different parts of the estate, with only one chapel reserved for Edward's family to remember a loved one. Charles confronted William about this arrangement, and the solicitor noted that the prepared rooms would return to the estate. By evening, changes were clear. The nameplate was removed, and the keys were moved from beneath Charles's portrait to a simple box. Inside the box was a note from Edward that read, "Let this house belong to those who need it." So who truly won that day? Was it William, who gave up the house for control? Edward, who chose to give away his inheritance? Or the 2 strong women in 1999 who secured a blended family's future with one decisive statement? Let me know exactly what you think in the comments. Then hit subscribe. The palace genuinely believed that the last key opened a grand manor, but it opened something infinitely more dangerous: the absolute proof that within this family, the past is never truly settled.